Good evening. I'd like to pose a quick question to you. Who is the only person that can make you look like a complete fool when attempting to communicate in a business environment? Give up? The answer is you. You are the only one who can make yourself look like a complete and utter fool when attempting to communicate in day-to-day activities in your business environment. Today I'd like to give you 5 tips for good business communication that will help you to relay your message more clearly and conveniently to the receivers. The first tip that I'd like to give you would be to use plain English and be specific. Transparency is the key here. Being more specific in what we want the sender or the receiver to do is key. If we don't tell the receiver how to act or what exactly we want them to do, how is the receiver of the message supposed to understand what he or she indeed needs to do? Being as transparent, precise, and specific as possible is key in achieving the end state and what we need done. The second tip would be to never use jargon. Confusion can be very, very vital when not achieving a task. A subordinate can easily say, well, I didn't understand what you wanted me to do, or I didn't understand how to take the path that you wanted me to take. And that's why we must be very clear and not use jargon that we think is common sense and common knowledge to everybody, when in fact it may not be. The third tip would be know who your audience is. Adaptation to an audience is vital to relaying our message. For instance, if I'm talking to my 6-year-old daughter, the words that I use and the manner in which I speak to her are going to be very different from if I'm speaking to a 25-year-old counterpart or subordinate at work. The words that I use will indicate the level of education or knowledge on the subject that individual has, and we must take that into consideration when speaking to that audience. The fourth tip is to never forget your manners. Using your manners in a business communication are very effective in eliciting a response. When I say, please get this task done by 5 o'clock versus get this task done by 5 o'clock, the receiver is more inclined to accept the fact that this task needs to be done when I put please in front of it, because that's one of the manners that we have grown up and become accustomed to in this life that we live. If I'm just demanding something be done, it's a little easier to shrug that off and say, oh no, let's just forget that and move on to the next task. The last tip that I have for you would be to proofread everything that you send out. Getting the eye perspective, we formulate a message in our own head and we think it sounds very good, but perhaps we should maybe run it by our coworker next to us, or run it by your spouse or loved one, and see what type of message that they derive out of that. If it's not the message intended, then perhaps you need to revise and edit that message. Proofreading it, maybe reading it yourself again, or having somebody else read it will help you to eliminate any errors or any unintended tone that may be present in that message. This will again get you out of that eye perspective and get you into a more worldly perspective that other people might intend to hear. So in conclusion, I'd like to say the 5 tips that I can pass on to you for effective business communication would be to use plain English and be specific. Never use jargon. Know who your audience is and be able to adapt to them. Don't forget your manners. And lastly, proofread your message before sending it out. I'd like to thank you all for your time tonight, and I wish you well.